Savannah Hernandez is calling this a completely unprovoked attack.
True.
In video, you can see she is repeatedly pushed to the ground.
That's a freak who belongs in prison for a long time. We're actually going to talk about a really messed up story and something that I don't think got enough attention outside of right-wing and conservative media, where of course it was highlighted, but it didn't get nearly enough attention in mainstream media or in liberal networks or from many of the kind of journalists and media personalities who crow about, and often I agree with them, about attacks on the free press and all of this. Here is the News Nation headline here. 3 arrested after Turning Point USA reporter posts video of assault. A Turning Point USA reporter was attacked Saturday during a protest in Minnesota, a flashpoint for conflicting views on immigration. Savannah Hernandez was covering a protest against immigration and customs enforcement at the Whipple Federal Building in Minneapolis when she was swarmed by people screaming obscenities, blowing horns and whistles, and repeatedly shoving her to the ground. Now listen, I'm familiar with Savannah, and she is, in many ways a very right-wing commentator and journalist, and I disagree with her on a whole host of things, but it really doesn't matter. Like, I watched the full footage of her at this protest, and it's horrible. These people surround her, they mob her, they intimidate her, they get closer and closer to her, they shove whistles in her face and then blow them right next to her ears. They surround her, and then when she's just trying to protect her body, she brushes someone. I can't show you the full footage of the assault because it'll get blocked by YouTube or demonetized at least. But it's really tough to watch, and she gets into a physical altercation with this woman who she brushes, and then the woman attacks her and freaks out, and that's bad enough. But then after that fight, or however you want to characterize it, I do think Savannah was not the aggressor in that, but however you want to characterize it, after that is separated, a grown man named Chris Ostashuko runs up from behind and shoves Savannah to the ground extremely violently. And I'm just shocked by that, and how disgusting that is, and how unacceptable that is for anyone. But also there's the layer that you're allowed to report on public anti-ICE protests. That is not a crime, and in fact is a very important thing protected by our Constitution. And Savannah was doing her job. Whether you're free to criticize her, free to insult her, to bash her work, to disagree with it, to challenge it, but she has a right to do it, and that right is the same right that protects left-wing gonzo journalists and on-the-ground reporters. So you really should support it either way. But these unhinged mobs of people surround her in this really dangerous fashion, and then she is brutally assaulted. And I'm not confident that we'll actually see justice for it, and it's not getting nearly enough attention. But here's a clip from Fox News summarizing the story and showing some, but not all of the footage. I did watch the full thing.
Vice President J.D. Vance now on his way to Georgia, where he is set to speak at a Turning Point USA event tonight at the University of Georgia, as 3 anti-ICE protesters are referred for charges after attacking a TPUSA reporter in Minneapolis. Correspondent CB Cotton reports live for us. She's in New York. Hey, CB.
Hey, John. So Turning Point USA reporter Savannah Hernandez is calling this a completely unprovoked attack.
True.
In video, you can see she is repeatedly pushed to the ground. A man even shoved her from behind, sending her tumbling into the pavement.
Stop touching me!
She was covering a protest at the ICE detention facility in Minnesota when the crowd became hostile once they found out she worked for Turning Point USA. She says she was targeted for her beliefs.
I got brutally assaulted and pushed to the ground by a 250-pound man for simply going and reporting on anti-ICE activities. I was targeted because I work for Turning Point USA, because I'm a brown woman who thinks the wrong thing, because I am a Christian. They were mocking me for my religion. They were mocking me for my political views.
The Hennepin County Sheriff's Office tells Fox 2 men and 1 woman have been referred to the local district attorney's office, which tells us the charges are still under review. On X, Turning Point CEO Erica Kirk writing to Hernandez, quote, "We've got your back." And this growing outrage over the attack comes as a packed house is expected at UGA for that Turning Point event, which kicks off at 4:30 p.m. local time. As you mentioned, John, Vice President J.D. Vance and Erica Kirk expected to address students, and we will be monitoring for protest.
So there's a lot to unpack about this story, but at first I would say I put some things into different categories. Like the Savannah is on TV and she's talking about them mocking her for her religion or her beliefs or whatever. And like as I think as rude as that is, they're allowed to do that. What they're not allowed to do is swarm and get in her face and blow whistles in her ear and grab her and push her and punch her and shove her to the ground. And to me, that's the main part here. That is what is so unacceptable. And I would feel the exact same way if this was like a far left journalist. I do not care, right? It is so unacceptable to treat your fellow citizens like that, to violate their rights like that. And it doesn't really matter. It would be wrong no matter what. But especially these like woke king allies, right, who think they're doing their big one and probably have Planned Parenthood stickers on their cars, brutally assaulting this young woman because they don't like the way she thinks. There's just like a diabolical hypocrisy there, and it's really disgusting. And I'm still not over the grown man who attacked her. Because like the 2 women fighting, I still think that woman's in the wrong and should be charged. But like, at least then you're sort of picking on someone your own size. Like, I still don't support that. Like, don't misunderstand me. I think that's wrong and she should be charged and everything. But it's like exponentially crazier and worse to me that a huge 250-pound man ran up on her from behind after the fight had broken up and physically attacked her. Like, that's a freak who belongs in prison for a long time. Seriously, and that's the problem here. Because this happened in Minnesota, and because this will go to a local DA, so they arrested the people. The police officers did their job. They arrested the people who perpetrated this crime, right? But then it's up to the DA to charge and prosecute those people. That's where I literally have zero confidence that it will actually happen. I mean, it could also not. Like, we see progressive DAs across the country just routinely not prosecuting people for crimes, especially when there's like a political valence to it. And they're going to start from the perspective of being extraordinarily sympathetic to the ICE protesters and extraordinarily unsympathetic to Savannah. Maybe they'll prosecute them. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But like, that's part of what makes this story so upsetting to me is I just have very little faith that justice will be served. And if it isn't, then the message you're sending is that it's okay to beat the crap out of young women and violently assault them if you don't like what they have to say. And it's okay to attack reporters if you don't like their angle or their coverage or the outlet they're working for, in this case, Turning Point USA. And no, I'm sorry. I don't care if you're a progressive prosecutor or you're a conservative DA or whatever. It's like, you should be, especially after everything we've seen over the last couple of years, with the murder of Charlie Kirk, the attempted assassinations of President Trump, the attacks and killings of those Democratic lawmakers literally in that state, in Minnesota. Political violence isn't okay. And anyone who engages in it needs to have the book thrown at them, regardless of ideology or political party. That's how I feel. That's how I think most Americans who are still sane feel. And yet, here we are with this actually happening, and we really have no confidence that honestly, maybe there's some sort of federal charge that could be brought against these people. I can't, obviously that's getting into legal territory where I don't have the expertise to know, but if there is, they should look into it, because I have no confidence that Savannah will be protected under state law by local prosecutors in this area. And then also I'll just say that, like, it's frustrating to me because the kind of establishment media class does a lot of patting itself on the back and giving itself awards for like press freedom. And I very strongly and very vocally disagreed with President Trump's different attempts to attack the press or infringe on press freedom, like punishing the Associated Press for not saying Gulf of America or other things. But like they make such a big deal out of those kinds of threats to the press. and then often don't really have nearly the same amount of energy as this. So I just think that, like, if a CNN reporter had been assaulted this way by a crowd of angry MAGA supporters, a young female CNN reporter brutalized by some 250-pound MAGA man, I think we all know that it would be like wall-to-wall news, right? It would be like the subject of like huge attention. But because the valence here of the ideologies and parties is switched, it isn't. And like that's wrong. That's not okay, because these things should, and maybe you're gonna think I sound ridiculously naive because I do, but these things should be bigger than politics. But they're not. Increasingly in this country, they're not. And that's incredibly unfortunate to me. So listen, my support goes out to Savannah, goes out to Turning Point, anybody who, whether I agree with you or not, anybody who's victimized like this, I think it's absolutely unacceptable. So do send her some support if you can.